And we are back in action. It's been a long couple of days, I'll say that. Obviously, I'm Christopher from Minutes of Sports. That's my guy, Ron, from Best Damn Media. Last time you spoke to us, we were grieving what was quite frankly, an embarrassing loss to Michigan by Ohio State, or a loss that came in not quite the fashion you would want, because obviously, as an Ohio State fan, as someone who covers Ohio State, every single season has three goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the Natty. And 9 times out of 10, if you fail on that first goal, the rest of the goals oftentimes stumble along the way as well. But here we are, because there is still a quote-unquote shot, and we had to react and take a look at where Ohio State will fall in the rankings, because you know how it goes. Every single year when Ohio State loses one of these games, the mental gymnastics begin. How can you get in? How can you get in? How can you get in? And every single year, you see teams 5 through 8 drawing up in their heads a nightmare scenario about getting in the playoffs, because that's the ultimate goal. Well, it would make everything go away, right? Well, maybe not everything go away if you're an Ohio State fan, but I mean, shoot, last year when it was Georgia, you take a look and it's like, hey, it could have went that way. It could have went that way. A win could have exonerated Ohio State and Ryan Day for the loss against Michigan.
I'm hurting, man. I feel just like I felt last year, and I'm like in that still depressed mind state of I don't want to make the playoffs. Like I don't want to see it. I don't know if this team is ready. And I felt the same way about last year's team. And then we were within a field goal of the national championship game. Yeah, so like while my heart is telling me, man, lick your wounds and get ready for 2024. Are you saying there's a chance?
You know, fortunately, or for some like myself, unfortunately, there is a chance. And I'm not going to lie, like the more you look at it, the less chaotic it has to be for Ohio State to get there. Like, I'll keep it a beam. Like, it doesn't even have to get that chaotic for Ohio State to get in. When I look at these top 8, and I'm looking like, do I want it? Do I really want it? Do I want to put myself through this again?
I don't know if I want to go through it. I feel like I've already went through stages of the grieving process where like I'm starting to accept what happened, and then my team wasn't good enough to get it done this year. And then you're going to give me hope just to let me down again. Like, I'm conflicted of where I'm at as far as whether or not I want these Buckeyes in the playoffs. But I feel like before we dive into the scenarios that sit in front of us for the Buckeyes, let's talk about some of the rankings, because, man, you know, we have been talking about this Alabama team and how good that we think it is. They almost lose to their rival. It just shows you how crazy rivalry weekend can get. And it looks like the committee is sending a message. Alabama is not getting in the playoffs.
Dude, first of all, what a game. Like, rivalry weekend is always exceptional. This one was no different. That ending of that game should have been frontline on everything if they didn't play the same weekend as Ohio State, Michigan. Sorry, hate to break it to all the SEC fans. Ohio State, Michigan is a bigger rivalry. That was an incredible ending, and Jalen Milroe proves to be the guy that you can never count out. He's got, even if he plays a subpar game, he's got so much gamer in him, so much athleticism in him, and the big playmaking ability to get there. I am jealous of Alabama for having Jalen Milroe, and that's not something that I think a lot of people expected to say, given the fact that he didn't throw the ball well last year. And you think that with Ryan Day and Kyle McCord, they would be kind of a pro product who would be getting on the field.
Last year, he got benched for Tyler Buckner at one point this year. And right. Zach was ready to rip your head off on the show on Menace to Sports when you suggested Jalen Milroe was a better quarterback than Kyle McCord.
He is, bro. He's better.
He 1,000% is.
He's better. Bro, he's so good.
Everyone knows how we feel about this Alabama team. Super strong defense. Jalen Milroe, super dynamic on the ground. I just think that that's a team that a lot of people don't want to see, except for maybe Auburn. But It looks like they have made a statement. And then you see Texas behind Ohio State. Ohio State slides all the way to 6. Were you surprised to see the Buckeyes still ahead of the Longhorns?
So as soon as you see that, it's like, oh, wait a second. It's more than just a chance. It's a pretty strong chance, Ohio, because I thought Ohio State was going to slide down to 7. I'll keep it honest with you. I thought that Texas having that win over a number 8 team in Ohio, like Texas has a better win than Ohio State.
I think they have the best win in the country.
Well, second best per the committee. Washington has the best win per the committee.
And I mean, I might argue that Michigan might have a better win.
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But Texas has a better win than Ohio State, but they also have a worse loss than Ohio State. So the committee's telling us, okay, these losses matter. These losses also carry a lot of weight. It's not just about beating the good teams. You also got to beat up on the teams that maybe aren't real playoff contenders. And that's kind of one of the things that happened at Texas. So I was surprised to see them at 7, but I think it's important. I think it's important for them to be at 7. And them being a roadblock for Bama, it means everything.
So I have our first poll ready here. We saw the Buckeyes drop to 6. Does Ohio State deserve to be any higher than that, or are you happy with the ranking?
You got to be thrilled with the rankings. They don't deserve to be number 6, to be honest. They deserve to be maybe 7 or 8. I mean, what Ohio State put on film this year, and now that they're no longer undefeated, we can sit here and talk and be honest about it. Ohio State has been mediocre on offense all season. Everybody else in that top 8 is really good on offense, and everybody else in that top 8, guess what? They all like their quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I feel like we are about to stoke the flames on another Ohio State Civil War that I thought that we put to bed. And it's like crazy because the Ohio State loses. We talk about how crazy this season has been. We do shows almost every day. Big shout out to Bleacher Report. We're on here multiple times a week. We've been talking about the Buckeyes nonstop. Yeah. It feels like since the season ended last year, since that missed field goal, we haven't stopped talking about the Buckeyes. And then you finally feel like you're going to decompress. And it's like, no, get ready for battle because it's time for a Buckeye Civil War because it seems like we may have a quarterback battle on our hands this offseason or maybe not. But I want to keep going with some of the rankings.
Wait, can I flip something to you real quick?
Absolutely.
I think the committee did something really, really sneaky, right? They dropped Ohio State from 2 to 6. What's that? 3, 4, 5, 6. I wonder if Georgia loses to Bama, will Georgia fall also those 4 or 5 spots? Because that is the scenario that makes things very dicey.
I don't see a scenario where the expected most powerful conference doesn't get a team in. Because are you painting a situation where an SEC champion does not get in and a one-loss Ohio State sneaks in the back door because Georgia loses?
Well, I just wonder because Ohio State got punished a little bit for losing to Michigan. And according to the committee, Bama is not a better team than Michigan. So will will Georgia get the same treatment? Will they move a minimum of 4 spots?
Yeah, I don't think so. I really don't. I have my tinfoil hat on under here. I don't think that the SEC would be excluded from the college football playoffs. I mean, and if there was ever an argument for a 12-team playoff, that would be it. No SEC teams in the playoff.
Facts. But Ohio State sliding right there at 6, getting passed by Oregon. That was the one that a lot of people wanted to see. How do you feel about Ohio State at 6 and the projected Orange Bowl as long as we don't get chaos ensuing?
I think it's deserving. This team does not deserve to compete in the playoffs. I think, like you said, I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not upset with 6. I wouldn't have been mad if they slid even further. If Ohio State was 9-10 after that loss, I don't think this team deserves to get into the playoffs. I don't think they're one of the best 6 teams in the country. So yeah. I think Buckeye fans and Buckeye Nation should be grateful. And for the fans that do want to see this team continue to compete and think that they have a chance in the playoffs, I mean, the door is wide open, it appears.
It does appear that way. So Ohio State's sitting there number 6. And I'm here to tell you this. They will not win with number 6. Ohio State will not win anything of meaning with number 6 out there. So number 6, beating number 6, right outside the top 4, right where you belong. Just not good enough. And, of course, how many points do you lose by? You lose by 6 points. You're ranked number 6. Your quarterback's number 6. I'm not going to say it. Y'all will.
Man, that's terrible. We move on to number 5, man. We have the Oregon Ducks. They jump the Buckeyes. What are your thoughts there?
I probably think Oregon is the better team than Ohio State. But if you're the committee, how can you justify this one there, right? Because Michigan is a better team than Washington, and Washington beat Oregon. So why is Oregon ranked ahead of? So it's like the committee's telling us that Ohio State has a better loss than Oregon, and they have better wins than Oregon, and yet they're going to rank Oregon ahead of Ohio State. Make that make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It seems like lazy ordering, and it feels like the committee's just waiting for the conference championship weekend to do its job, and they'll let
Mm-hmm.
those two sort themselves out and let them fall where they may.
And they could have already done that. Like, they could have left Oregon at 6 and then justified them moving into the top 4 if they beat Washington. Like in what world does Washington have the worst, or does Oregon have the worst loss and the worst win, and yet they're ahead of Ohio State?
And it goes back to what we've talked about all season with this college football selection committee. It seems like each team has their own set of criteria that they are specifically graded on, and they're ranked based on their individual criteria sheet. It's like they have a checklist, but it's unique to every single team that they're grading.
Yeah. I don't know. I would have probably flipped the two of them, but it's fine. I mean, honestly, like in a neutral site, I would probably pick Oregon to beat Ohio State. I think Bo Nix is a real deal, and the kid might win the Heisman.
So we have a new team rising into the top 4.
Yeah. There it is. They're back.
They are back.
After a quick hiatus, Mike Norvell, Keon Coleman, and Johnny Wilson. It's crazy. This is the big transfer 3. All 3 of their best players are all transfers.
And I think this is an example of how you're able to completely transform your team with the transfer portal that has completely turned into free agency. They talked about last year about the record numbers of people entering during the winter period. And it seems like there's going to be even more players this year. And you see the casualties of guys that don't end up finding homes. But when you're talking about some of these top competitors, I feel like most of these guys end up settling in somewhere. But it has completely changed the landscape of college football and shows how quickly you can revamp a roster with the resources and a good coach that's able to land guys in the portal.
And they're a little bit of a glass cannon. And with Tate out there, you do wonder they are the most susceptible to get clipped. Obviously, they've got Louisville this weekend. And for Ohio State to get in, that's got to be one of the games that has to happen. Like, if Florida State wins, it's over, effective immediately, because the winner of Washington, Oregon gets in, and if Florida State wins, there's no spots.
No, and they would be looking out, and it'd be unfortunate because of the situation. Because I do think if Jordan Travis wasn't hurt, I feel like Florida State would be a lock at this point, and no one would even be floating out potential scenarios of Florida State losing. But now with Tate Rodemaker at the helm, I don't know how sure of a lock they are this year.
Number 3 team in the country, well-deserved. They probably should be number 2 or number 1. Maybe not number 2 or number 1, but they definitely earned number 3. Washington, they got a group. They're really explosive. They jumped from 4 to 3, as a lot of people thought they would. Now they are the most dangerous matchup. And honestly, them being at 3, if they win, oh boy, you want to be battling for that number 1 spot.
Yeah, I mean, how comfortable do you think Michigan would be in seeing Michael Penix again, an old foe?
That'd be wild. That'd be wild.
Yeah, I feel like the confidence exuding from the Michigan fan base would be all about the fact that they've beat Michael Penix before, and they would try to carry that all the way through. But I think that they would definitely be able to test that defense significantly more than we saw Kyle McCord do this past Saturday.
That's a fact. And again, this is where seeding becomes so important. Like Washington's a really good football team. If you're Michigan, you don't want to play them around 1. And I know you have confidence to probably be the favorite, but they're a team that can certainly air it out, and they'll dare you to play one-on-one coverage against Rome Odunze and Polk, 2 of the elite receivers in all college football. So, I mean, like, looking across, like, they've got to be a scary team. And also, Oregon's got to be a scary team, because you think about it, if Florida State wins and Oregon also wins, like, who gets ranked where? And then that number 1 seed obviously becomes, like, either more challenging or easier. Last year, a lot of people, including Kirby Smart, felt like, you know what? We got the short end of the stick because we were the number 1 team, but we got a tougher opponent than Michigan did. And it ended up being a much tougher game. Obviously, we know how that TCU game ended. So Washington is definitely one to watch. Washington, Oregon, and Florida State, to see how those 3 teams fall or kind of stack up late is really going to be important. And now we have our number 2 team, the good old Michigan Wolverines.
Oh, man. I got to ask.
Yeah.
Did they deserve to be the number 1 team? Do they have the best win in the country? Because, like, I'm sitting here, and as much as I hate to give these guys flowers, maybe the homer in me, like, hey, my team's pretty good, and they beat us. I think they're the best.
well, the issue with putting them at number 1 is that you would have to put Ohio State number, like, 4 or 5. Because, like, you lost by 1 possession at the big house against the number 1 team in the country. We can't drop you to 6.
No.
We drop you to 4 or 5. But them being the number 2 team, okay. See, look, they didn't lose to the best team in the country, so we'll jump back a little bit.
If you're a Michigan fan, are you upset that you don't have? It doesn't seem like you have the opportunity to move up to 1 and potentially get that Florida State matchup.
Absolutely, livid. I mean, how can you not be? But again, I guess last year, it's what the cultural ball karma circling back around. Last year, you got an easy draw on TCU and blew it. So this year, no easy draw. Like we're gonna give you Washington, we're gonna give you Oregon. We're gonna see how you stack up against those guys, because I think there's no way Florida State finishes higher than 4, even if with a win this weekend.
And if Michigan matches up with a future Big Ten opponent, they're choosing the Rose Bowl, and that's going to be a West Coast advantage for whatever team out there has ends up making that game.
Yeah, it absolutely will. I mean, that number 2 team is going to be the Rose Bowl, because obviously Georgia will get first pick of venue. They're not going to choose the Rose Bowl.
No.
So it's gonna be Michigan, Oregon, Michigan, Washington in that game, and that's gonna it's gonna be a fun game, and it's gonna be a game in very much so Pac-2 territory for the final Pac-2 game ever.
That is crazy. The best year that we've seen in recent memory from the Pac-12, and that conference is going to dissolve after potentially having 2 college football playoff teams.
Absolutely, after 2 of them. Jeez, wild to think about.
Our
number 1 team. Number 1 team. Number 1, Georgia.
Kirby Smart looking right at you, telling you he's coming for his 3rd national championship.
Bro, Kirby's nuts, bro. Kirby's so good. This team is a machine. They're playing really well. I do think it's funny that the team that gave him a dogfight this year was Georgia Tech. And I have my fair share of theories on it. I mean, not every college kid can be perfect. Maybe you overlook somebody. Maybe this, that, and the third. Maybe you're holding back some of the playbook to get ready for Bama, because you shouldn't need to empty the playbook to beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech gave them a really good battle, and I think Georgia Tech giving them a good game was the justification to maybe flip Michigan and Georgia.
Has this season changed your perspective on Georgia any, as far as there being almost perceived weaker landscape and no true juggernaut in college football? And the Buckeyes have been so close these past couple of years and had an open landscape and still weren't able to get there. And somehow Georgia, after 3 years, all of the things that have happened off the field, all of the turnover on the team, turnover among coaches, and they are still finding a way to just run like a well-oiled machine. And here they are about to play for almost another national championship. I mean, they are in the driver's seat to get there.
I mean, the thing that really helps them is the fact that they won't face a really dynamic quarterback and really dynamic offense this year. I know I like Brady Cook a lot, but he's not quite that. And they're not going to have to face, LSU this year, because LSU has a terrible defense. But the teams that really gave them fits were the teams with true NFL quarterbacks. And it looks like they've been able to skate through the whole season without having to face one. If you look at their last couple losses, the one or close games at least, they were in a dogfight against Kentucky, even though that was a defensive battle. That was the Will Levis Kentucky team. They lost to Bryce Young the first time in a game that was as lopsided as last year's Ohio State-Michigan game. And the game they almost lost, that was an absolute game of the year, was Georgia Ohio State, and that was the game where C.J. Stroud absolutely put on a dynamic show. This year, it looks like they're going to be able to kind of hop, skip, jump, and make it through the season and maybe the first round of the playoffs without facing a truly dynamic quarterback. And the only 2 that are really out there when you look at kind of the top 4 landscape are Bo Nix and Michael Penix. So
before we move on, I'm looking at this poll, Chris, and I am just completely perplexed. It says, does Ohio State deserve to be a top 4 team? We asked the chat. No peeking. Guess the percentage on this vote, yes or no.
I'll probably say 80% no.
It is 62% yes. So we got to ask the chat what you guys are thinking. Let us know in the chat, and we will discuss. Let us know where your minds are that you feel that the Buckeyes should not have fallen out of the top 4 after that loss to Michigan, and we will get to some of those. But I want to move on to our next topic in regards to the Buckeyes. Do you want the Buckeyes to make the playoffs? I mean, some of our chat here, I would imagine when we release this poll, it's going to be a resounding yes, because a lot of them feel that we shouldn't have even dropped out of the top 4. Are we overreacting to a 6-point loss? Because while it does feel like the sky is falling as a Buckeye fan, because we just lost our 3rd straight time to that team up north, but we just had an argument as Michigan the best team in the country, and we only lost by 6 on the road with a deficient quarterback that we've known about since the beginning of the year. Are we overreacting? And is this a team that could actually make noise in the playoff if they were to make it?
So I guess I feel like when you're looking at the playoff, it's like 4 best teams and 4 teams that have the best shot to win a title. Do you think Ohio State would have a shot to win the title if they were at number 4?
No.
Do you think Bama would?
Yes.
Do you think Oregon would?
Yes.
Do you think Washington would?
No.
You think Florida State would?
No.
Okay, so with that, you split the difference, maybe 4 or 5. But I'm not going to lie, I don't think that Ohio State is good enough to win a title. But I also know that Ryan Day, with a month of bowl prep, can make things at least a little bit fascinating, at least in terms of like having time to really game plan. And we saw it every time he gets to the playoffs. That month off, you always see like an offensive explosion. You remember Utah was crazy. Clemson was crazy. Georgia was crazy. So we'll see. I guess it's so. If you think that Kyle McCord can play a clean playoff game, then yes, we should be a top 4 team.
Do you want to see Kyle McCord play a clean playoff game?
I don't want to see. And maybe like we're 2 days out, and maybe I'm tripping a little bit. I don't want to see Kyle McCord play for Ohio State again. I'm cool.
So we had a huge argument on the Buckeye Roast after the Indiana game, and our guys Q and Mike both said, "I know he struggled, but I want to see more." And I'm like, more what? And I feel like we got more of Indiana the rest of the season, and we saw more Indiana against the team up north. And I feel like, me personally, I've seen enough. And even if they feel like he is capable of winning at Ohio State, why did we lower the standard? We went from the worst quarterback season by a Ryan Day coach quarterback being 35 touchdowns through the air and 10 on the ground to now, projecting out, we haven't seen Kyle McCord throw more than 3 touchdowns in a game. So at best, he's going to finish with 1 short of the Michigan passing touchdown record that we've been making fun of relentlessly for decades at being 28. I'm personally good, and I feel like that takes us to our next question, which QB should start in the bowl game? Because I want to hear from Ohio State fans. Do you want to see more Kyle McCord, and do you want to see him play in this next bowl game, whether it be a playoff game or the Orange Bowl? Chris, what are your thoughts there?
Absolutely not. Thank you for 11 wins, but the only one that really meant the world was that Michigan game. I'm okay. I'm okay with it. And I know people are going to like talk about CJ Stroud and like he had back-to-back losses to Michigan. CJ Stroud was a great player at Ohio State, and he saved so many games because the defense was bad. Kyle McCord had one job, and it was not to mess it up. And what do? You mess it up. I don't want to see Kyle McCord as starting quarterback at Ohio State. I feel like it's as clear as day that it's time to kind of move on. Shout out Ryan Day. And I think in this bowl game, it's really simple. You give the first half to Devin Brown, you give the second half to Lincoln Keynotes, and you move forward. You treat it like a spring game because it's about the development of the team. The same way, I love Chris Olave. I love Garrett Wilson. And those are guys that I wanted to say. I wanted to play one more game. They didn't, and they allowed the young guys to go because they know that development-wise, it's important for the young guys to kind of get this bowl prep. And I see someone in the chat saying Stroud had some pretty ugly games. CJ Stroud is 10 times the quarterback that Kyle McCord will ever be.
Go ahead.
Kyle McCord can go into the hyperbolic time chamber for an entire year, work on his craft, watch film, be out, and still not be 30% of the quarterback CJ Stroud was. I'm not doing it.
I'm so glad that you brought up that comment because I'm sitting here in my head imagining a scenario that 2023 Kyle McCord is the quarterback in that Oregon game, CJ Stroud's first year starting as a quarterback. We lose that game 73-0. Like CJ Stroud threw that ball, I believe 53 times in that game. Like I have nightmares even thinking about Kyle McCord throwing 53 times in a single game.
Agreed. No, that absolutely horrifies me and terrifies me. The positive thing about this Ohio State team is that they're so talented, and all you need is a guy that doesn't make mistakes and makes an emphasis on one, first of all, scramble drill. You got to have someone that extends the plays. What does every quarterback in the top 4 have in common?
They're able to move. I told you. I put the graphic up on our show, The Buckeye Roast, and I said when Kyle gets in the scramble drill, he looks like one of those skeletons that you see around Halloween with the loose limbs and the little buttons that let them swing his decorations. It's like, what is he doing? Like, please just tuck the ball and go down before you fumble because his limbs are flailing. It's looking like he's saying right, left in his head to remember how to run. It's just not a threat. And I've talked all year about, you could say J.J. McCarthy's a mid-quarterback. He's not great. He's not going to be a first-rounder. He's not going to break the Michigan passing touchdown record. But I'll tell you one thing. He's a gamer, and he's going to make it happen on third down. And that's not something that I feel like I can say about Kyle McCord. I'm sitting here looking at this poll from the chat. Which QB should start in the bowl game? Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz. Leading the pack, your guy, Devin Brown, with 44%. We were told that this was stop the count.
Stop the count. Stop the count.
Stop the count. We were told that this was an open quarterback battle, and Ryan Day believed that he had 2 first-round quarterbacks in this room. Yeah. And I tell you, I did not just watch a first-round quarterback at Ohio State. It's crazy that everyone talks about the great season that Kyle had and all of the great stats. It's almost like there's another guy with worse stats in his conference that's projected to be a first-round pick with worse stats. Well, why is that? Because people who watch the games can tell that J.J. McCarthy is a better quarterback than Kyle McCord. If these stats meant so much and he wasn't, and you don't want to account for the fact that he was throwing to a generational wide receiver, another wide receiver that they thought was going to be a first-round pick. His backup tight end was a top 100 wide receiver. Kate Stover's a day 2 pick. Like, I don't know how much more help you could have as far as weapons. Oh, and you had the number 1 running back in your recruiting class behind you. How much more help can you need? How much more development do you think that Kyle McCord is going to develop so much more that he's going to offset the loss of Marvin Harrison Jr. through his development? Because that's essentially what we're saying. We just saw what we got out of Kyle McCord. We're about to lose a generational wide receiver. And if you start him again next year, you're telling me that you believe that he's going to offset the deficiencies that we're going to have losing Marvin Harrison Jr. And I just don't see that, or how that's a reasonable way to move forward with this team.
You lose absolutely nothing splitting the game reps between Devin and Lincoln Kienholz. You lose nothing because we've seen that Kyle McCord for a whole year. So honestly, like you lose nothing. If you're going to go to the portal, cool, go to the portal. But you know what else you could do? You can get these 2 kids ready, these 2 young men that want to be the starting quarterback of Ohio State. You give them a chance to prepare as a starter and to go show what they can do, and you get to see them in front of the lights. All the time we hear in the offseason about, well, it's practice. We don't know how they'll be in front of the lights. Well, now you have an opportunity where you can play in front of the lights, and it doesn't mean as much as that Michigan game. And you get to see it out there, and the fans get to see it. So, I don't know.
Do you think that would be a knock on someone's leadership if they felt that they were emotionally unable to handle watching others compete for the job and still stay committed to their brothers and their team? That if seeing someone else compete, because like you said, what do you have to lose? You know what you have in Kyle. You just watched him play for 12 games. If these other guys go out there and stick it up, you have 12 games of data to judge against for Kyle McCord. So are you telling me that you believe the leader of your team is so emotionally unavailable to this team that if you bench him, you're going to lose him? Yeah. Is that really a leader?
No, it's not a leader.
So it brings us to our final question that we have for the chat. How upset would you be if Kyle McCord is the starter again in 2024? We have 4 options. Very upset, moderately upset, not mad, or thrilled. Chris Drew, where are you?
I would be heartbroken because I would feel
that wasn't on the poll.
Whatever the most upset I could be is if we run this back with Kyle McCord for a senior season. Oh my goodness gracious. That means something went drastically wrong. You're telling me Lincoln Kienholz can't get ready by the time he's a sophomore? You're telling me 3rd year Devin Brown can't be ready? Like, nothing can be worse than that. Like, I would be heartbroken. And I would be puzzled by the quarterback development of Ryan Day if you can't get any guys ready, and it's like 3 straight misses then.
So I'm looking at the poll. How upset would you be if Kyle McCord is the starter again in 2024? One of the options is thrilled. Can you guess the percentage on that one?
12.
0. Not a single person is excited for this guy to come back. Yet we are hearing rumblings that he's going to be the starter in the bowl game, which is malpractice.
Malpractice.
At Ohio State. There's absolutely no way you can trot that guy out there without seeing what you have left in that room, because I feel like you're sending a message to someone in that room if Kyle starts again. I feel like there's going to be attrition in that room if Kyle McCord's a starter and we do not see the other guys play. And I don't know if what we saw these past 12 weeks is worth losing the two guys that we haven't even had an opportunity to see.
Mm-hmm. Cam Ward on line 1.
Pick up the phone. But I am Ron James of Best Damn Media. Big shout out to Bleacher Report for having me and Chris Drew here reacting to the college football playoff rankings and what it means for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Man, talking through this, Chris, you have me convinced that we're going to be gearing up here for a playoff run, and that scares the heck out of me. But if so, we will be back here on Bleacher Report to talk more about it. We'll be back in a few days, and we appreciate you guys having us here. Chris, let the people know where they can find you.
Every single weekday on Menace of Sports right there at noon on our YouTube. And then you can find me wherever Ron is on Bleacher Report.
You can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. It's 2_TES. You can find me on the Best Damn Media YouTube platform. We are live 7 days a week with a whole host of shows. And of course, you can find us here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and our season has come to the end. No more instant reactions for Buckeyes unless we make the playoffs. So maybe we'll be back for some more content. We appreciate Bleacher Report for having us all year. Go Bucks and OH.
I